James Kemp, welcome to the WP Minute.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You and I, we've seen each other in passing, right? I think on Twitter and post status and other areas. This is going to be a first-time conversation. Lots to get into. This is not a gotcha podcast by any stretch of the imagination, but I do want to get stuck into some of the things around Automattic and WordPress and WooCommerce. But for the folks that don't know who you are, what's your storied tale in WordPress? I always knew you as a guy that was like launching a bunch of products, but now you're at Woo. Paint us the picture of James.
Yeah, I think you summarized it pretty well. Always been keen to kind of dive in and build stuff. Since 2009, we'll go back a fair bit. 2009, I got like a web design job at an agency. We started using WordPress at that point. WooCommerce wasn't really a thing back then. I think Jigo Shop may not have even been a thing back then. But Magento was, and we used Magento a lot. And I spent some time, my first kind of plugin experience was building a plugin to integrate Magento into WordPress. So you could bring across like the cart data and the navigation and stuff from Magento to kind of make the experience of building a Magento site with a content managed experience as well more simple, more cohesive. So I did that. I built a plugin back then. Like I say, that was my first experience dabbling in the world of WordPress and the plugin ecosystem, which I believe was quite early on, like comparatively to now, where there's a plugin for everything. Back then, there wasn't really too many plugins, and there definitely wasn't an environment of bigger plugins that were like solutions, like Lifter LMS and like that kind of thing. Give WP, you know, that there weren't these like solution based products. It was very much utility based plugins, which is the world that I kind of went into and you know spent my time in was these utility based products. So after some time, WooCommerce came about. I think it was 2011. I built my first WooCommerce plugin, which was called Multiple Images Per Variation. So a very like feature relevant plugin name. I wasn't particularly a marketer back then. Started selling that on CodeCanyon, and then just kind of doubled down on the WooCommerce side of things. And built a ton of, you know, different utility style WooCommerce plugins. That one was renamed as WooThumbs, which is still around today. Eventually, like, stopped doing anything except WooCommerce plugins. And I think by maybe 2017, I decided to stop what I was doing elsewhere, which was working, running my own agency with a friend, or a colleague at the time, I should say, building websites for people and, you know, using WooCommerce, using WordPress, not really using Magento. I got out of that as soon as I could. And yeah, that allowed me, the agency side of things, to build up a collection of products that I had built, you know, because clients needed that functionality. And it got to a point where I wasn't particularly enjoying the client work, but I was enjoying the product work. So I rebranded as iconicwp.com, released all the plugins over there, you know, created product pages and all that kind of stuff, changed it from being under my own name to being Iconic, shifted off of CodeCanyon onto Freemius. I think I was one of the first Freemius users, or one of the first successful Freemius users, I guess. And then in 2021, Iconic was acquired by Liquid Web, Stellar WP, where it still resides today with, I believe, all of my team that were also acquired at the time are still over there working on it. And I worked there for a couple of years. And then I reached out to Paul, who was the CEO of WooCommerce at the time, and just said, I feel like I've taken Iconic as far as I can take it, with it being utility based. That it's not an easy sell, particularly in the market as of today, where there's so much competition for all of these utility based products. But I have like a very deep understanding of WooCommerce, and also, what merchants and what clients are actually looking for from a WooCommerce site. And I just said, is there any role there that would suit me? And we probably discussed it for maybe a year on and off. I met with Bo, who is now the CEO of WooCommerce, at WordCamp Athens, maybe? Yeah. A WordCamp Europe, I can't recall which one. And we had a chat about what I could do, and then eventually we settled on product manager. So I joined WooCommerce as a product manager after 2 years of, or 2 years after my acquisition with Stellar. And after about a year of being at WooCommerce, I've been there maybe a year and a half, just over a year and a half now. My role was shifted from product manager, where I was focused on like one specific thing, which for me was order management, to now being core product manager, which means I kind of touch all sorts of different areas of WooCommerce and try and have an impact on what the overall product is, what we include, what we don't include. And I work alongside the other product managers that we have. And that is essentially my life story.
It's a fantastic life story, by the way.
Thank you very much.
When I say the phrase 800-pound gorilla in the room that doesn't get any attention,
Mm-hmm.
how does that make you feel about WooCommerce? And let me frame it. And we will talk more deeply about culture and the current vibe of things. But I've often looked at WooCommerce as that 800-pound gorilla in the room. And from the outside looking in, especially when you compare it to, say, a more commercialized Shopify, it's easy to wonder, like, why aren't we seeing more happen with Woo and its core offering and its marketing and its just overall consumer appeal, like a Shopify, and I even argue a Squarespace, because they often lean into the e-commerce side. 800-pound gorilla in the room that doesn't get the attention. Your thoughts?
I have a variety of thoughts on the subject. I personally believe that the audience of WooCommerce versus something like Shopify or Wix is slightly different. I think Shopify are, if they do marketing, they're targeting the merchant, and you can jump in, you can build a site very quickly. You can you just sign up and then your site is kind of there to start building. WooCommerce has a challenge in that respect, where the merchant, if we were targeting the same type of customer, needs to make a decision before they've even touched WooCommerce. They have to decide where they're going to host it. They have to figure out what hosting is. They probably don't even have that kind of technical understanding of what that means. They probably need to think about a domain name before they've even spun anything up. And I think that's a challenge. And I think that is a challenge when it comes to marketing as well, because it's hard to direct them somewhere. We can direct them to a landing page, but then they still have to make this decision on, how am I going to get started? And that's something I've brought up quite a lot recently, and I think is something that we plan to tackle, is to right now we offer, like, if you go to start on the WooCommerce website, you kind of get presented with these different hosts that we partner with. But to the person looking, like, all you see is the host name. Like, you don't know why you would choose whichever one you go for. And that's, I think, a touch point that we need to really focus on and make very smooth. Like, and it can still be, fair across the different hosts, where maybe there's some kind of survey or like pre-questions that they populate that then narrow them down to a specific host, which they can then click a button and it spins up a working WooCommerce. So that's one of the issues. I think another potential issue is with something like WooCommerce, there's also learning that has to happen to kind of learn WordPress. You're not just learning WooCommerce, you need to understand how WordPress works. And on these closed systems, you don't have that issue. Like, they can very much tailor it to be the same for everyone. And the third issue that we have is every environment can be completely different. They could have a different set of plugins, they could have different hosting. The hosts themselves can, modify how WordPress and WooCommerce look once it's installed, which is a challenge. And I don't know whether that answers all of your questions, but those are like issues that I see that make marketing harder for us. But I will say that marketing, since obviously you saw the rebrand that we did recently, is like a stage one of our new marketing efforts. And we have some really nice, like really modern looking marketing efforts that are going to be rolling out over the course of this year.
I do like the rebrand. I think the logo is great. It does look really good. One of the predictions I made at the start of the year, of course, off the heels of a lot of the WordPress or Automattic versus WP Engine drama, was that I think in order for Automattic to really perform and compete, that two things would have to happen. One, they would have to cut the fat, and it's a poorly chosen phrase after a 16% roughly layoff of Automattic employees. But I think that Automattic just has a ton of products, right? Like when you look at WordPress.com, investing time into WordPress core when that was a thing, Simple Note, Tumblr, VideoPress, Jetpack, like the list goes on. WooCommerce, of course. And that was my other thing, other prediction was like they have to get rid of all these products that are just not part of that experience. The experience you just mentioned, which was, listen, the customer has to understand all this technical overhead. They have to understand WooCommerce, and oh, by the way, because they're in WooCommerce, they're also having to learn this WordPress thing. So there's all these particular challenges. My other prediction is that in order for Automattic to succeed as well throughout this year, the only way to achieve that is to make WordPress.com or Woo a better experience. That hosted experience by Automattic, air quotes, will be the best way to experience WordPress and WooCommerce. Do you think that is a direction we're headed in, where Automattic has the best experience, whatever that might be, and then open source world we can just do whatever we want over here in the Wild West, like, third party ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe the core initiative is to make the experience better at Automattic.
Yeah, I completely agree that should be the case. Like, if you spin up a WordPress site on WordPress.com, that should be like, this is the prime example of WordPress at its finest. And I think there is some work that is currently undergoing to make that the case, to kind of bring .com back to what WordPress is, because they had like their own admin experience on .com that I guess sat on top of WordPress. So yeah, there's definitely work happening there. And we had WooExpress for a while, which was meant to be that, and also acted, I would say, more directly as a competitor to, Shopify. The platform there was a lot closer in spec and how it functioned to what Shopify and other providers offered. Obviously, that was wound down a bit and kind of bundled into this commerce package on .com, which I think already existed, but I think they took some of what WooExpress was and put it into that package. I would like to see that kind of come back a bit. And I think the reason for that winding down made sense. The people working on that were WooCommerce developers. They were part of the WooCommerce team. And the idea of winding that down was that we didn't want to be, as a company, as WooCommerce, we didn't want to be building stuff that only benefited us. Within WooCommerce core, like if we're building stuff that could benefit everyone, then we want to do that in a more global way. And that's, part of this be the host, help the host stuff that I can't remember when it came out, but sometime last year. That was like a shift in thinking that anything we're building should be able to benefit any host and not just WooExpress. But I also think, and I also agree, that we should have, as a company, as Automattic, the best, managed solution of WooCommerce specifically. Whether that comes back or not, I'm not sure, but I personally would like to see it.
Automattic needs to survive. It needs to be a healthy company, regardless of what any of the critics might say. I don't envy the position of being an automatician these days. It must be a little tough to get some criticism, especially when it's stuff that's sort of like outside of your control and largely not based on like the product experience. I mean, I think everybody complains about every product ever made. Like this is, and especially if you're on Twitter, you're always going to see, complaints about a product. It's just a never-ending thing, right? I work at Gravity Forms full-time. We've been doing this now for 15 years, and we get complaints every single day. So it's like I totally get it. But how's the culture, right? How's the culture? How do you feel reporting for duty every day under the Woo brand?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've got that WP Engine thing kind of hanging over us. There's negative connotations from that on Twitter, but honestly, to me personally, there's not that much negative, and I think because most of the people that I interact with on Twitter were aware of my journey, up until that point, they're kind of aware of me as a person, has helped. But I have seen other people who maybe don't have that history, not, have as good of experience. So we've got that. We've also got the layoffs that you mentioned as of last week, I think it was, which has definitely had an impact on people. But leaving them aside, which is, tricky. I personally love the experience. The people I work with are all deeply invested in making WooCommerce as good as it can be. There's tons of collaboration, like across the product team, which I'm primarily in, engineering, design, marketing, developer advocacy. Like it feels very tight knit. But obviously these things have an impact, and it's typically most impactful when they've just happened. And I'm hoping that it leads to us being able to put things out more quickly, or even, focus on priorities more easily rather than trying to do everything. We have to, really think about what the priorities are. And we've just got to make the best of that situation. Like you say, I think Automattic is a big asset to the WordPress and obviously WooCommerce space. And we need to make sure that thrives. And if this is the way to do that, then I hope it works. But yeah, for me personally, like the satisfaction of working on WooCommerce when it's the stuff that I'm putting in or like advocating for within WooCommerce is impacting so many people, which is something that I could never really do prior to this. I could impact our own customers, but the kind of scope of people that interact with stuff that I've had a say in or that I can advocate for is much larger. And that's really, what I want to do. Like, I want to make this product as good as it can be. And to do that, I listen to a lot of people. I do a lot of research. I physically ask the questions, and try and bring a lot of stuff that was previously behind the scenes, out into the public for people to see. And I love doing it, so I hope I can continue to do it. But yeah, it's challenging times, and we just have to do the best with what we've got. I tend to stay out of the discourse online on these topics, because I don't think it adds anything. Like there's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is just make sure WooCommerce is as good as it can be, and that we're focusing on stuff that people actually want, and listen to what people are saying. So
there's nothing a lot of critics can do about it that either.
No,
but they also weigh in. But hey, that's the internet for you. Pop culture, the Doge effect, it's really affecting everyone. And when you use that term loosely, because it gets thrown around as something that is bad, but cutting the fat, optimizing, what have you, is necessary for any organization to have a moment to reflect. It's not a clean thing. It's never a clean thing. It's never an easy thing, and it's something that must be done. I was on the way here to the office listening to, I also follow the podcast industry fairly deeply, like I do with WordPress. And I was listening to some, real high level ad executives talking about sponsorships on podcasts. And by sponsorships on podcasts, certainly not this podcast, but the ones that are made by celebrities, athletes, news personalities, etc.
Yeah.
And they were talking about host read ads, and that's when the host reads an ad, and they're talking about how those are the best ads, obviously. And for some sales executive out there who is selling this ad spot on whomever celebrity podcast it is, they were saying it took 80 touch points to get from when the buyer from a brand, let's say WooCommerce, says, I want Kevin Hart to read the WooCommerce ad on his podcast. It took 80 touch points to get that done. Right. And they were just like, why does it take that much? And they're having this real deep conversation about how they need technology to solve this. And I'm like, technology? You get the ad, the guy says yes, he reads the ad, you listen. That's very easy. But there's always these complexities that come into play with big organizations.
Yeah.
Which brings me to one of Woo's competitors, again, Shopify, also in the news, air quotes, for, talking about embracing AI. Paraphrasing, Toby put out his social media post saying that, look, just like Matt Mullenweg had said a few years ago, we got to learn AI deeply. We got to start to embrace this stuff. I've seen automaticians more publicly talking about AI, doing things with AI. My friend Rich Tabor, quite often he and I have a little chatter back and forth on Twitter about using AI. I have been using AI, but I am cautiously optimistic about it, especially when I hear leadership, not just Matt, but from other CEOs. I get a little uneasy about what embracing AI means, especially when there's no real plan. Like, hey team, go learn this thing, because if you don't, you'll be the one that's going to be gone next. And I just look at that and I go, what are we optimizing here? Are we optimizing the workflow, or are we optimizing the company's expenditures? Your thoughts on AI? How are you using it? Where are we heading with it for Woo? And one other tidbit, I did just get the email from WordPress.com that they launched their AI builder, which I've yet to try out because it was literally a few hours ago before I hit record with you. AI, everyone's favorite 2-letter acronym. Your thoughts?
I love AI. I will prefix whatever I say by saying that Matt has basically, said the same thing as Toby revealed the other day to people at Automattic, as far back as last year sometime. That he encourages people within the company to experiment with AI, to expense AI, to explore the options that are out there. We had an AI team actually for WooCommerce for a while, where we were just focusing on what can we do with AI, and this was probably this time last year. And you'll be aware like how dramatically AI has evolved since then. So yeah, we had a team that was focused on AI at WooCommerce specifically, and we were able to ship that into Woo Express, which is another barrier that doesn't exist anymore. We kind of wound that team up a little bit because we didn't have a clear path to deliver AI. Whereas something like Shopify, people are paying for that plan, so they're kind of covering the costs of AI, whereas WooCommerce can be hosted anywhere. It's not something that we could really ship in core, as it were. Maybe we could have some sort of extension, but we wanted to explore that a bit further, and we weren't quite ready, I don't think, to push anything out there. We did have some cool stuff in Woo Express. But yeah, I guess that's AI at a product level. And I should note that we are revisiting WooCommerce AI and what that means, and how we can deliver that. You may have seen James LePage joined Automattic, who's very heavy on AI, has built a ton of cool AI products. So he's now leading the Woo AI initiative as well. So that'll be cool. But me personally, yeah, I use AI all the time. I use it to just experiment and build stuff that I couldn't build before. So, games, what they call vibe coding now. Experimented a little bit with the WooCommerce API and like pulling that into a game environment. I built like an art gallery experience for my photography prints, so you can kind of walk through a gallery and click through to a product, which is just a photo print. But really, that's like hobby. I'm just doing it in the background because I want to see what these tools are capable of, and having been a developer, it's just fun to do. I think any developer enjoys coding, so that's why I do that. But in the day-to-day, I use AI a lot for multiple things. So I would use AI to kind of take my ideas and formulate them into something presentable. For example, I would use AI as like a partner to just talk to and just talk through ideas with, that, perhaps frees up someone else's time, comes back with ideas that aren't solely based on two people's imaginations, but they're, widely based on the breadth of the internet, essentially. I use AI to help me rephrase things that I've written. I use AI for research. So if I have an idea for a feature within WooCommerce, then I might ask AI to kind of do some research on that and find examples of people, requesting that functionality, whether it's in WooCommerce or somewhere else. So yeah, at the product level, the product role level, I use AI all the time, and I find it very useful. What I don't want to see with AI is, I guess, having AI do the work for you without you then, analyzing what it's actually saying and thinking it through. And the same with code. Like I know people talk a lot about AI taking your job as a developer or whatever, but I see AI as a tool. I think the people who use it best and who produce the best results with it know what it's doing, and like know how to interact with it, and why something maybe isn't working, and how they can kind of reframe their question to make it work in an optimum way. And I think it's very powerful. I think you can solve problems a lot more quickly, and I'm all for it.
I want to end our conversation on a more positive outlook, I hope, than a lot of the deeper questions we've been going through and asking ourselves through this conversation. I do think that one of the North Stars, and maybe this is more for the WordPress side, and hearing you answer some of these questions, it's interesting to hear how, there's WooCommerce, and then Automattic, and of course WordPress. But I think the North Star for a lot of WordPress future success is going to be through the playground. This is my prediction. Playground.wordpress.net for those of you that are not familiar with it. You can check out some of the videos I've done on the YouTube channel about Playground. It's fantastic. You just load up WordPress. It's right in your browser. You don't have to install anything. You can learn how to use WordPress. You can start to learn how to code WordPress. You can test out a plugin. It's fantastic. And I think that's going to be the starting point for a lot of users in the future. And maybe Woo and WordPress.com and Automattic proper, like that more automatic experience, might have their own iterations of Playground. But I think that's the great starting point. Getting your hands dirty with the tools and features. Your thoughts on getting the users to start experiencing this stuff straight away? And is Playground poised to be like that entry point for the future of Woo or WordPress?
Yeah, I completely agree. And it touches on what I was saying earlier about WooCommerce's entry point. It's very technical at the moment. And it's something we've discussed. Maybe the first touch point of the WooCommerce experience is that you can spin up a WordPress /WooCommerce site on Playground. Start building out a site there, and maybe we didn't touch on it too much, but maybe integrate somehow with the AI builder that was rolled out earlier today by Automattic, that you can spin up a WooCommerce site, tailor it to your needs, and then from there, click a button to then host it somewhere. The challenge we face is that we don't want to lead people to our hosting. We want to be fair to all of the hosting providers out there, but specifically the ones that partner with us and feature on the WooCommerce website. I'm not sure what that looks like. Maybe it just randomly chooses one of them and leads you off in that direction, or maybe it's tailored to whatever the site is. How many products they're going to host, how many orders they expect, like all of that kind of information. But yeah, I do think getting someone into WordPress, into WooCommerce as quick as possible is going to be key to solving adoption. Solving the issue of just getting started without having to think, what's my domain going to be? Where am I going to host it? All that kind of stuff that you have to think about that you don't have to think about on other hosted solutions.
I think we'll see a resurgence, my prediction for the rest of the year, especially through whatever economic thing we're running through right now.
Yeah.
that we'll see a resurgence of WordPress services-based businesses. So for the freelancer or small agency listening, what are the opportunities for WooCommerce now? Like, obviously we know we can go after customers and clients that are wanting to sell things, but is there something from your vantage point you could share with the freelancer agency owner listening to this that says this is the best opportunity for you right now to utilize WooCommerce in your client solutions?
Yeah, it's a tricky one to answer because I think the biggest thing about WooCommerce and WordPress in general is how flexible it is. And I think that's probably the main, or at least one of the main selling points of using WooCommerce over something else is there comes a point where you can just do anything with WooCommerce. I can't envision many scenarios that you couldn't achieve using WooCommerce. One of the things that we're going to be focusing on a lot is builder tools, which is something that we have some, form of builder tools currently, but we're really kind of doubling down on that because we're aware that these more technical WooCommerce builds and the people using WooCommerce aren't necessarily the merchant directly like they would be on these other platforms. Typically, they're a builder-assisted merchant, so the builder creates the site, hands it over to the merchant in some way, and then maybe they continue to maintain it. So yeah, there's a real big focus on builder tools that we want to lean into. Some of that is going to be like better import-export tools right at the beginning of the project, being able to import products, customers, orders, like all of that stuff that you can't currently easily import without building your own solution to do that. But also we're experimenting with like blueprint data, which is kind of heavily influenced by Playground, where maybe to spin up a WooCommerce site, you just give it a JSON file of, these are the settings that I want to pre-configure. These are the, whatever products or categories that I want. You click a button and it's kind of done and completes that process a lot more quickly. And yeah, I think performance is a big focus for us at the moment. I think that's something that we hear about a lot, and something else that we want to tackle is the kind of, I think one of the main issues with WordPress and WooCommerce is the compatibility layer and like the update layer, where because of all the different scenarios where WooCommerce can be installed with all the different plugins that maybe run alongside it, we want to figure out a way to prevent issues or to kind of pre-warn or early warn people that issues have arisen or might arise. to just try and make that experience of updating and plugin compatibility more seamless. So yeah, all of that to say, like the builder experience and the compatibility experience and the update experiences and the performance experience is something that we're like heavily focused on. And I would suffix that with just saying that, the WooCommerce team in general is pretty open to feedback, and me specifically, like I welcome feedback and suggestions, and I regularly talk to mostly agencies and builders that are working with WooCommerce and hear them out and, implement their feedback and advocate for their feedback. So hopefully that answers the question, but I know I talked on a lot of points there.
James Kemp, WooCommerce.com. Also check out developer.woocommerce.com has been a great source of information, especially for me. Where else can folks go to say thanks either to you or to learn more about WooCommerce?
Obviously, WooCommerce.com. There's the Twitter accounts. There's two, actually. There's one for WooCommerce, which I believe is just at WooCommerce. And there's one for the developer side of things, which I think is something like Develop Woo. I should know this, really. And then me on Twitter, James C. Kemp is the best place to reach out to me. And yeah, just do it. If you've got questions, you've got suggestions, just DM me. I'm pretty sure my DMs are open. Or do it publicly, and I will respond or direct you to the right place.